Okay, hey, how are you doing?
Doing all right, you?
Yeah, I'm surviving.
Yeah. It seems
I
that
am.
everything just keeps on going, even
It
if the
does.
world is kind of crazy right now, that everything just keeps on going, and
Just
you
one
keep
day at a
running your
time.
business and
Yep, yep.
um, doing what
Trying
you
to
have to
keep your
do
children alive and fed and all that good
and
stuff.
educated. I
Educated,
mean,
I
if
know.
if possible, that's where I'm at. Mine are still home. So,
I learned slopes this last week, so I
oh,
learned how to
I
do slopes. I forgot, but I remembered.
For
So,
me, it's fifth grade, surface area of prisms,
yeah, yeah,
so
there you
it's
go.
really
There you go.
helpful to me
Yeah.
in owning our business,
Yeah, it's very, very applicable.
And I wanted
Yeah,
to talk
go
to
ahead.
you. I brought it up to you in our phone conversation, but I thought this was good for a lot of the owners that we know and managers that we know,
Uh-huh.
and just therapists in general is cancellations,
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah. Hmm.
and you know we have therapists come to us all the time, and we run our practice a little bit different. I think people can probably tell that from some of the conversations we have, that we are very, very family centered because it's so incredibly evidence based, probably the most evidence based practice. And so we make a lot of our policy and a lot of our process based on families.
Hmm.
So when I have therapists who come from other clinics or new therapists come up and ask me questions like that, um, it kind of gets, that part of me going, that soapbox
Uh-huh.
part of me of like, first question, what about the family?
Hmm.
So if the therapist comes up to me, and I was curious, like if a therapist comes up to you and says, I have this family who's canceled, 6 out of their 8 sessions this month.
Hmm.
Do I discharge them because of that? What do you say?
Yeah. It's so hard because I think that it's easy to jump to, well, they just don't see this as important. Like it's easy to jump to those conclusions that and put it more on them than on us. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
something that we've tried to do is try to reflect on ourselves, as much as possible without just jumping to, well, they just don't care about their children or they don't, care about therapy or whatever. And so typically what I say when I'm talking with therapists is I start by trying to get to know more about the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So like I want to know, how long have you been seeing this child? Like
Mm-hmm.
are there other things going on at home, like that you might not know about, and why don't you know about it, or how can we find out more about it? And I think there's a lot of, I mean, as we've talked, there's a lot that can go into these things. And so I'll talk with therapists, like first we need to, see if we can offer some flexibility in what
Yeah.
we're doing, which is hard, especially when you're
Right.
using a traditional schedule. I see kids on these days and these days. I think the other big thing that I'll talk with therapists about is that are you making sure that what you're doing with them is important to them?
Right. That
Like
that
if,
family centered piece,
yeah, like
is
if,
this centering around
yeah,
what's important to the family?
yeah, because if
Yeah.
it is, and you are, are we really focusing on things that impact that family's daily life, and are they a part of it, and are they seeing, do they know the progress that's being made or not being made or whatever, that the more we can involve them, the more I think families feel that connection to the therapy, and
Mm-hmm.
they value that therapy when we're working on things that are important to them, and we're really
And
tracking how
including
they're
them,
and including them in those
so
sessions.
that,
And
yeah, I
mhm,
think coming and waiting in a waiting room, while, yeah, there's sometimes where family might need that break and things like
mhm,
that, but making sure that it's not like us just going out and saying, this is what we worked on today, but that they come in and they really see what the child is doing well and what the child is struggling with and how we're prompting them to get things right, so that then they can be including those things at home, and they're going to get more bang for their buck, with that.
mhm,
They know how to help their child. They know that it's not just about you.
mhm,
I think that for me personally, some of the things that come up too are family capacity. And you know where I'm going with this, because I've mentioned it in a few of our other things, that I'm a mom of a child with a disability. She's deaf, wears cochlear implants. It was an acquired deafness. But at the time that she became deaf, she was also receiving dialysis, and we were going to the hospital 3-4 times, and she wasn't eating, and she needed to get to a certain weight to get a transplant. And so I'm dealing with all this. And do you remember what I'm talking about here? When she wasn't eating a lot. And so I was asking you guys for like tips, what should I do? And you and some other OTs were like, well, we could see her for therapy, or we could, we could refer her to these different feeding clinics. And I just never put her in it, into feeding therapy. And I felt so guilty and so awful about it as her mother. But with family capacity, what we're supposed to do as the professional and as the therapist is look at all of the different variables that are impacting this family. That they could be taking their kid to dialysis 3 or 4 days a week for 4 or 5 hours a day, and the kid sleeps all the other time. And, any waking hour they get with their kid, that's the only time they really get with that child. That was my life, And I know that families that we see, the kids are in school all day, and then they've got other children that are going to, different kind of outside activities, and maybe they want a dinner with their family or a night at home with their family. And we're asking them to drive to the clinic and stay at the clinic for 30 or 45 minutes or an hour and a half if they have multiple therapies, and then take that 30 or 45-minute drive home. That's a lot. We're sitting here joking before we got started today about we're keeping our kids alive and fed and educated, and we don't have all of these other pressing issues that a lot of the families that we serve have, and it's hard to do okay, you haven't killed each other yet, and you're healthy, from all of this pandemic situation. And then, we're keeping you educated, just trying to keep up with studies and everything. We're trying to keep our own work lives going. Everybody else has these variables too. And if we're seeing them for therapy, they've got one more variable than I do on my plate anymore. We're not in that boat anymore. But that's hard. And we really should be reflecting on that. That's a part of the skill we can bring to the table. And that's what we encourage our therapists to is think about, family capacity, and think about, is what we're doing meaningful, and do they see it, like you said? So I think that just making sure that it's not just, we have this policy, and if they missed 6 out of 8 sessions, you're out of here. But like you said, we have a deeper conversation about what's really going on.
As a parent, like, what would be a good way for a therapist to start that conversation? Like, what would feel like okay, but not judgy, or not like, oh, you're not showing up? Like, what do you think would be a good?
I think anytime that the professional took kind of some of the responsibility, it helped me a lot. Like I said, I was feeling a lot of guilt. If you're a therapist that's also a parent listening to this, that happens hand in hand. But if you're the parent of a child with a disability, I didn't know it until I was one. You're feeling that on a different level. I had a child before my child that had a disability. I felt the guilt, but this is on a whole different level of, am I keeping her alive? Am I going to, my voice got quivering there. Is she going to be able to talk? Is this important enough for Brooke, my older child, to miss whatever she's doing? The guilt was just insurmountable. And I remember one therapist telling me, with my situation, it was more about doing like home practice activities that I was not doing. And it was because I couldn't keep up, but she said, hey, I was just thinking about this home practice, and, it looks like that might be a little more, I might be putting a little too much on you right now. And I remember just kind of feeling like, oh yeah, you are, like it's not me, it's you this time. And it just gave me like this relief of somebody else is taking a little bit of the ownership in this, and gave me a little bit of breathing room so I could be honest. I wanted to do what was best for my kid, but at that point in time, I couldn't. So I think if we said maybe something like, hey, I've noticed there's a lot of cancellations, and I just want to make sure that I'm not asking too much of your family right now. This is going to be worthwhile, whether we take a break and do a home program, whether you come once a week, twice a week, we can make it worth your while, no matter what service delivery model is right for your family right now, and and just kind of taking that off their plate. For me, dialysis and the life-saving measures that my child was getting at the hospital were more important than therapy. I know it's like for some therapists out there that something could be more important than them. But for some people, it's going and seeing that child play volleyball that might be more important right now, or going and seeing the other child at a spelling bee, or having a dinner at home because everybody's just wiped out. That's more important right now. And that's okay, and we need to reassure families that it's okay if you need to do these things. Just remember, it's easier, for us as therapists, we have a lot of kids that could also use our services. So if you want to take a break, I just want to be able to tell other people that we can see them right now, but we'll fit you in, just reassuring all of those fears and worries about if I take a break, what will happen,
and even maybe setting a timeline for it, like I think that would be helpful.
Yes,
like
that would be
let's
huge.
Just take a break for 4 weeks. And then on this date, let's meet back and let's reevaluate. Like maybe the child, made the same amount of progress. So we can just stay at 1 week, or we can back off a little bit, or which kind of gets into episodic care, which we'll talk about.
We talk about other things.
But I think too, like, just to kind of reiterate, it's really like we talk about this in our daily notes, is in our focus group, is knowing what those contraindications are for therapy. And
Absolutely.
that's what it's about. It's about really, when you get to know the family, their capacity, you can start looking at what are contraindications for them participating in therapy, right?
Yeah.
It's these are the things that they are gonna miss out on. And so is it really what we're doing? Is it important to the family? Is it something that values the time enough that that they can attend, and that they want to attend because their input's valued? And so that's great. I always love it when you talk about that, and it gives us a whole different perspective on really knowing family capacity and how to communicate in those situations, and not just I recommend this twice a week and this is what you're going to get. It should be individualized. And so, well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
This was good. It's tough topics, but something we're all faced with, working with
for sure,
children and families. And so, well, you have a good day, and
all right, you too.
We'll meet up later.
Okay, bye.
Bye.